Call the roll.
Alderwoman Cruzen, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Williamson.
Here.
Alderman Moore, Alderman French, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Carter. Present. Alderwoman Green. Here. Chairman Conway.
Present.
5 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have Board Bill number 217 and 218. Alderwoman INGRASSIA on 217, and if we need to talk about 218 while we're talking about 217, that'll be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. I am here before you today on Board Bills 217 and 218, which would allow a special business district to be set up in Lafayette Square to provide for ongoing maintenance and preservation of the neighborhood's unique physical assets. It establishes the Lafayette Square Special Business District for the years 2015 through 2019. I have a petition that was signed by the residents and filed by the clerk by current owners of property. A survey and investigation of the possibility of forming the Special Business District has also been filed with the clerk. The district will be used to pay costs and expenses which are incurred in the acquisition, construction, improvement, expansion, or maintenance of facilities of the district as permitted by statute. The anticipated amount of funds is approximately $1.4 million over the course of 5 years. And this legislation, if passed out of this committee and out of the board, will allow the residents of Lafayette Square to decide themselves whether or not they would like to tax themselves for these improvements.
Madam Clerk, I would ask that we vote to put Board Bill number 217 before us.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that Board Bill 217 be placed in front of the committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Cruzen, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Moore, Alderman French, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Green, Chairman Conway.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I get just take questions at this time.
Okay. All right. Normally I'm loud enough. I'm trying to be quiet. Oh. Okay. All right. Can I have a list there? Thank you. Alderman French, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
Alderwoman Green.
No questions at this time.
Vice Chairman Williamson.
No question.
All right. Thank you. I have no questions.
Okay, I would ask that we pass out Board Bill 217.
We're going to do the speakers.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Eric Lemons or Lemons? Lemon. Go ahead. Just tell me where you live and go ahead.
Certainly, sir. Eric Lemo. I live in the 2300 block of Whittemore Place in Lafayette Square.
All right.
So, good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you so much for having us here this morning. As I mentioned, my name is Eric Lemo. I'm a resident of Lafayette Square, and I'm here in support of the bill that you have before you. I am a member of a small committee, actually a decent-sized committee of residents who have been looking at the possibility of alternate funding streams for the neighborhood. I recently moved to Lafayette Square about 3 years ago and was really enamored by the beauty of the neighborhood as well as the historic features. And then through becoming more involved in the neighborhood, realized that the neighborhood, while it certainly is gorgeous, has a lot of ongoing maintenance and preservation needs as well. I spent a year as a member of the board of the Lafayette Square Restoration Committee, which currently is tasked with maintaining a lot of the features and upkeep of the features in Lafayette Square. And as a nonprofit organization that raises money primarily through its house tour, it is also quite strapped for cash. Again, this group came together after discussing or trying to identify various funding streams for the neighborhood, again, to try to make sure that the features that the neighborhood currently has are maintained appropriately, and also to look to try to find ways to improve the neighborhood through various methods as well. If I may, I just want to grab this poster board that's over here.
Sure.
So these are just a few of the residents who support this bill as well. There are some others in the audience which will be speaking or at least standing a little bit later as well. Again, this group of about 15 of us got together and we looked at various funding methods. We looked at the special business districts. We looked at the SIDs, the commercial improvement districts. Again, trying to find ways to generate additional funds for the neighborhood. Again, the idea with these funds is not only to maintain the current features of the neighborhood, but also to raise money for capital improvements as well. And some of those capital improvements that we would like to do are things like improve neighborhood safety and security measures for both residents and visitors, to not only make the neighborhood safer for the residents, but also to try to make the neighborhood attractive for outsiders to bring people into the city as well. We understand that the legislation that you have before you is written rather broadly. We've tried to follow the state statute, or what I should say, what's written in the state statute. We felt that was the best course going forward. Again, we've looked at different SBDs and different SIDs currently in existence. We've looked at the Central West End. We've looked at Soulard. We've looked at Tower Grove South, Skinkard Bolivar, the Loop area, to try to take bits and pieces from what all those different groups and organizations have done to try to improve their neighborhoods as well. Again, we came to the conclusion that the special business district would truly be the best option for us. It provides an opportunity for us as the residents, property owners and renters to impose a tax upon ourselves to try to make our neighborhood better. Again, what we're asking the committee to do is to approve these two bills, which again allows the voters to ultimately decide whether or not they wish to impose that tax upon themselves. As I mentioned before, the bill is written rather broadly. We understand that there is some concern about that, at least among the residents, but ultimately it'll be up to the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Special Business District Commissioners, to determine a budget, which then ultimately is approved by the Board of Aldermen as well. So even though there are things written in the legislation that would allow for some interesting projects to occur, there are plenty of checks and balances to ensure that the money is spent on what the neighborhood truly wants. The meetings of this Board of Commissioners, and therefore the people who develop this budget, will be open to the public. We really want to try to make this as transparent as possible, not only follow the law, but try to be as transparent and elicit as much input from our neighborhood residents as we possibly can. Again, just wanted to thank you for your time this morning, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any for me.
Are there any questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Otis Williams. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here as a resident of Lafayette Square, not in any official capacity. I think.
Well, you look the same as I see you all the time, Otis.
Okay. So, again, I'm Otis Williams. I live in the 2100 block of Park Avenue, and I'm here to speak to say that I don't support the bill in its current format, primarily because I believe that it is one of those things that is too broad. And what I have here is, and I think my neighbors have all done an admirable job. So this is not to say that what they've done is bad. It's just that I think that we aren't ready yet. And I just compare it to all the other special business districts that have come before your board and that you have approved. And I have, excuse me, I have examples of the Section 5, which basically is the scope of each of those special business districts. And I think in each of the cases, you find that most of them, in this case here, have probably 2 to 3 items that they have basically narrowed down what they want to spend the taxes for. And in this case, this is taxes that we're talking about. And so what I'm concerned about is that we have not identified the things that we want to spend our money on, and that it's going to be left to the decision of the commissioners. I hear that there will be checks and balances, but I also know that unless we have it defined, that the group can, because there's always a group of folk who are very active and they manage to carry the day within our neighborhood. And so I just want to be sure, though, that this has the correct checks and balances from a legislative point of view, as opposed to leaving it to the commissioners that will be yet appointed. So what I wanted to point out is that according to the planners of the SPD, that there is about $1.4 to $2 million that can be collected from this over the 5 years. But if you read the Section 5 for this particular board bill, I mean, it has everything but the kitchen sink in it. And, you know, to include convention centers, aquariums, aviaries, you know, and if you look at the others that are there, it pretty much clearly defines the infrastructure that's going to be required, or the match funds that it's going to support, or whatever the item is. And so the idea that once we approve this wide open TIF, that we're going to then somehow come back and come to a budget, a well-defined budget, I just don't think that will occur. Okay, so I also have concerns about the Section 6E of the board bill. And in that section, this has to do with contracting for the services, and I just want to be sure that there is an open process, and I know that the legislation, or at least the state statute, requires that sort of be it, but it doesn't mention this in the board bill, and I just want to make sure, though, that it is, and that we don't use this, I call it our favorite few contractors, and that we also include a response for minority and women businesses in this as well. I think the key point I want to make is that we need a list of projects that will be done, and this does not have that. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I know that I have a number of speakers for, and Eric had touched on a number of reasons why he supported this bill. As the other speakers come forward, we don't really need to repeat over and over again the same reasons why you may be supportive. If you've got new ideas or new reasons, we're most interested in those. But every speaker will be heard today. J. Watson Scott. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Your name and address?
I'm sorry.
Your name and address.
J. Watson Scott, 1805 Lafayette Avenue.
Thank you.
Lafayette Square.
Lafayette Square.
The group that's working on this has been doing it for about a year, and Otis and I have, over the years, been on the same, same side of things. I am surprised that he's come forward this late in the organization of this to bring some of his concerns forward. Within the bill proposal to this honorable committee, monies cannot be spent outside of the district, meaning Lafayette Square, and the district is specified in the proposed board bill. The verbiage about aquariums, convention centers, and such things like that was basically boilerplate lifted from some of the state statute stuff to make it easier for this honorable committee and the entire board to move forward with. This bill has a sunset. We, several years ago, looked at doing historic lighting within the square. It was $1 million. We do not expect the city of St. Louis to come forward with money like that when we can do it ourselves. I've been in the square since 1972. Bought my first house on my MasterCard because they wouldn't loan money down there. The city has profited from the work that you're seeing from these people and other residents in the neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. We want to do additional things that we do not expect the city to do for us. We can afford to do it ourselves. I urge this committee to pass this board bill out to the full board for its consideration and then moving forward to a public vote.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Greg Lacey. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Greg Lacey. I live at 2317 Park Avenue.
Thank you.
I'm a homeowner, and I oppose this bill for two reasons. One is I think the real estate tax increase is excessively high. My personal tax bill is going to go up over 11% in a single year. In my experience of owning real estate, and I've owned my own home now for, I've owned homes for 15 years, this is an unprecedented tax increase on a single family dwelling for a single year. Also, my home is also up for a reassessment this year, which will likely result in also an additional tax increase. And the second reason I oppose this bill, there's no provision for property owners on a fixed income. I think a tax increase of this magnitude would be quite a burden for anybody who was on a fixed income. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions of Mr. Lacey? Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Wardwell Buckner.
Good morning. Wardwell Buckner, 2 W's in that, 1100 South 18th Street. I'm a 41-year resident of Lafayette Square, 1 year after Mr. Scott. I'm currently serving as president of the Lafayette Park Conservancy, which is a not-for-profit organization patterned after the Friends of Tower Grove Park. I'm here because the park would be a likely beneficiary of a lot of this money. Lafayette Park is a cousin to Tower Grove Park and Forest Park in that we have a number of 100-year-old buildings, monuments, statues, and other items which are very expensive to maintain. For example, one likely beneficiary would be the iron fence surrounding Lafayette Park. We have massive iron gates, 14 of which are missing. We have an iron fence that is 5 feet tall and 4,100 feet in length. It has serious issues regarding stability. The price of that, of restoring that fence and stabilizing it, is massive. And if I understand the financial condition of the city, and especially of Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, it's unreasonable to expect them to expend hundreds of thousands of dollars of their money. And Lafayette Park has a history going back to the 1850s of oversubscribing and helping to provide money for the park, pardon me, and the neighborhood, and I believe that will continue. If there are any questions, I will respond.
I just had one. When did they steal the gates? Like in the 70s or?
The gates, the original fence was put up in 1868, and the gates a year or two later. In the 1970s, the entire fence itself, not the gates, was taken apart and restabilized. The support system has failed.
All right. But the gates are missing? You said 14 gates were missing?
14 out of 22 are missing. That's correct. They come in different shapes and sizes and are rather expensive to reproduce.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Richard Gibson. Good morning.
Morning.
Name and address?
Name is Richard Gibson, 2319 Albion Place. I'm a resident in Lafayette Square. Been there since 1987. A few years, not as old as some of the folks here, but older than some. I first heard of this special business district in the September meeting. The concerns that were brought out were safety, lack of maintenance that the city can't afford apparently to maintain, and capital improvements that are deemed beneficial or necessary to Lafayette Square. All sounds good to me. I like that. However, the issues are somewhat bogus. For one, safety is not really an issue in Lafayette Square. According to the city of police, or the police department in the city of St. Louis, there were 133 crimes committed in Lafayette Square in 2014. In LaSalle, our neighbors close by, 261 crimes were committed. And in Soulard, which by the way has a special business district specifically for more police protection, had 472 crimes committed. All of these crimes, by the way, are lower than the year before in all three locations, Lafayette Square, LaSalle, and Soulard. I commend our police department. So the crime prevention piece, I think, is somewhat of a specious argument. Maintenance, obviously, is a problem. If the city cannot afford to maintain the city park and the fence work and other maintenance, then perhaps it makes sense for Lafayette Square to take on that additional burden to maintain those parts of the park that the city cannot. I think that's valid. Capital improvements. There's an entire booklet here of the 2001 study of Lafayette Square talking about all the capital improvements that need to be done, could be done to improve the neighborhood. Well put together, very insightful, very expensive. $8+ million in 2001 budgets. Well, if you took all of the capital money, all the money that was going to be collected for the next 5 years, times another 6 times that, or roughly 30 years, we would barely have enough money in 2001 dollars to do the capital improvements if all the money was spent for capital improvements. So the idea of creating a special business district with this kind of funding that we can have in order to accomplish the 2001 report is, again, somewhat specious. When I was at the meeting in September, I raised a couple of issues. Others who I'm hoping will speak today raised a couple of issues. One of which is, what are we going to spend the money for? What are the controls that the money is going to be spent properly? My big question was, okay, so you're going to do these capital improvements. The city cannot maintain the fence and the park now because of budget constraints. You want to do capital improvements, which will then in turn require additional maintenance on what is effectively a fixed timeline of income, 5 years. We will be committing to, I guess, Lafayette Square citizens or deferred maintenance, any capital improvement done in the next 5 years, because there will be no funding available for maintenance of that facility subsequent to that, unless this special board or special district is voted on every 5 years for perpetuity. Pretty heavy burden, I think, for neighbors and residents of Lafayette Square. I'm opposed to this plan in its current state. I agree with the gentleman who spoke earlier, who said, if we knew what we were spending the money for, we would have the ability to evaluate whether it's valid, to look at the maintenance reserves that would be necessary so that the fence can be maintained for perpetuity, to build a new gate every 5 years or 10 years, whatever time period is necessary based upon the funds that are available. But an open-ended blank check, well, not really blank, only $288,000 the first year, but nevertheless, a bucket of money looking for something to spend on. It's not the way I budget my finances, and I hope that's not the way the city, and I hope that's not the way that the Special Business District will budget their money. I think the concept makes sense for those things which are necessary for the community. Once we get a detailed plan that has more specificity and addresses issues like contractor viability, the appearance of, the ability to know where the money is being spent, then I will consider voting for this. In the meantime, I think it's a plan that is not yet gelled to sufficient quality to be voted on. Thank you for your help. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Alderman Williamson.
Yeah, just one question. What category of crimes keeps reoccurring?
The largest is classified as larceny, which in Lafayette Square, bear with me a minute, in Lafayette Square, that number was 66, roughly half of Lafayette Square's crime rate. The next largest was auto, which is not necessarily auto theft, but anything to do with auto damage or theft. And those two combined are over 100 of the cases. So when you look at it this way, these are, no one wants to be a victim of crime. But, this is not a crime spree in Lafayette Square. And again, I want to thank the police department and the support and the local policing that we have. Thank you for your help.
All right, thank you.
Lynn Larkin. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Your name and address.
Lynn Larkin, and I own 1901 Park Avenue. It's a 6-unit building in the business district. I live in one of the units, and I have a business for the past 4 years in the building, the storefront. I've owned the building since 1999, and I'm also now the president of the Business Association. I do agree with the Eric's comments, and the only other thing I would like to agree of, and I'm in favor of the tax district, and may consider being on the board of directors and making the application to represent the business district on that, so that the spending, so I hope I have a voice for the businesses. But I would like to comment, one thing that sort of shocks me is we are experiencing a crime spree at this very moment. Daily, I check the neighborhood next door just to see what happened last night and whose car got broke into. Just yesterday, driving down Park Avenue, I saw stuff laying beside a car where it had clearly been vandalized, and the person hadn't come out yet that morning to basically report it. If it's not daily, multiple cars are getting victimized per week. So, we are having an issue right now. And that will be addressed in the local community meetings and so forth as well. But I am in favor of the special tax district.
Are there any questions?
I have a quick question.
Alderwoman Green.
You talked about an application process for funding or for determining how the funding is?
No, it's actually an application to be a representative on the board if the special tax district gets approved. There will be, and I'm not sure if board is the correct term, but there will be a committee within the Lafayette Square Special Tax District to basically monitor and make decisions on what the spending will be and to be transparent about those funds and so forth. I know we're looking to have a representative from the business district on that board, and so that was the application that I was saying that I'm personally considering.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jeffrey Jensen?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Jensen, and I'm a resident of Lafayette Square on Benton Place, and also a co-owner developer of 1711, 1713 Park Avenue, a business owner as well. And I am in favor of this bill and establishing the special business district for all the reasons that have been shared. I believe Lafayette Square was the first historic district designated in the city of St. Louis. We are a jewel for the city and in many parts even the United States, and that has to be maintained. And in order to do that, there is a long history, as has been talked about from the very beginning of our neighborhood being established, of the neighborhood's neighbors standing in and improving the district. And I'm in favor of this going forward to improve both for our neighborhood and for the city itself.
Thank you. Pat Barber.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pat Barber, 34 Benton Place. We've been in the Lafayette Square neighborhood since 1988. I just wanted to bring together the whole issue of Lafayette Square planning. The long-range plan, which was approved in 2001, was the basis of moving forward for the next 20 or so years for the neighborhood. And in order to do all the things that we had in the urban plan, we said, we're not going to be able to do it with only house tour money, with only donations from residents, not only with help from the city, not only with the current kinds of funding that was available in 2001, but we would have to look at TIF type help and possibly special business district type help and greater funding from national foundations who might be interested in what's going on in Lafayette Square. So that was a document that said there are a lot of ways that this has to be funded, and so the special business district is part of that plan, and we certainly would use that money not only to go directly to safety, maintenance, and improvements. We would use it to leverage help from national foundations and other people who would have an interest in the kind of work that we're doing. So it's a big plan, not just a small one.
Thank you. Terrence Lee Barber. I didn't plan to speak. All right, well, thank you. Donna Haggerty Payne. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Jay Devine.
Good morning, thank
Morning.
you.
Name
Jay
and address.
Devine, 1719 Waverly Place. I've been a resident of the neighborhood since 1975. My wife and I have raised 2 children there. We own our home, and we own a small, some of the neighbors would say shabby business building in the neighborhood. I'm speaking in favor of the measure, in spite of the fact that I'll be retiring within the next couple of years. And I'd like to be able to say that I'm going to be on a fixed income. Actually, I will be on a radically shrinking income. So when you vote to increase your own property taxes, you want to think about that very carefully. And I think this neighborhood has taken a hard look at that, has looked at it carefully, and we're in a neighborhood where we've been able to restore it, to bring it back house by house. And you can do a lot of things as an individual to restore the home you live in or the little business that you're trying to bring to life. You cannot do much about neighborhood infrastructure. That costs more money, and this infrastructure isn't just on our block, on our corner, in our immediate neighborhood. It's an infrastructure that is a national treasure, and no one is going to take care of it if we don't as a neighborhood. We need help to do that. We believe the Special Business District is the means of providing that help. We've done studies and we've done neighborhood analyses, and we've had many open meetings. We've had an urban plan approved by this body, and we are taking a very careful look at what the challenges are and how to meet them. And we think this special business district is a key to that. It won't begin to give us the money we need for these capital projects, but it will be a tipping point measure that enables us to go forward and, as Pat Barber said, take a real crack at bringing in money from national organizations that are interested in preserving historic features like this. This little park in this neighborhood is the type of park, a Victorian walking park, which once many American cities had. Now they're all gone. There are only 2 or 3 left. This is a national treasure, and this is a key measure to helping us preserve it for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question. As somebody who is in favor of it, and most of the opposition seems to be from, being very wide in scope of what this can go to fund, would you be amenable to limiting the scope to say what was made in that 2001 plan, to say funding will go to X, Y, and Z infrastructure, rather than all of the shopping malls, plazas, the whole, boilerplate that's in there, limiting that scope?
I think we'd be willing to do anything to make this work. And as a previous speaker said, we've asked ourselves these questions, and we haven't been casual in answering them. The advice and counsel we've gotten, including counsel from a couple of people on the current Board of Aldermen and from a strong legal team, is that we wanted to put language in our statute that carefully echoed and mirrored the language that's in the state statute. No one wants to put an aquarium in Lafayette Square. No one wants to put a shopping center in. We don't have a place to put a shopping center in. In fact, we want to preserve the historic features of the neighborhood and to go forward with those. So the last thing this district would target is willy-nilly spending of money on frivolous projects. We're talking about projects that would be approved by the neighborhood in the form of an elected board of commissioners from the neighborhood, and the monies raised by the tax increments would be spent in the neighborhood. So we see it as an exercise in local democracy, the most local government of all. And we think it's very participatory. Every measure that we've put forth and discussed, and all of our discussions are on the neighborhood website for everybody to look at. We've had a number of public meetings. We expect to have more. We're actively soliciting board memberships. We want people to run from the board from all across the neighborhood, all parts of it. 2 of the people on the board will be renters rather than homeowners or business owners. So this is an exercise in representative work to do things that there are no apparent other ways to do.
And then what process will the board members go through to ensure that there's community input in how that money is spent?
We are writing a set of bylaws which will focus pointedly on directing the board to be inclusive, to have lots of meetings, to get lots of input. And we know from our existing neighborhood organizations that that input will be forthcoming and that no one will be shy about it. And we think a primary requirement for the board is that they listen, that they be a listening organization.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman, go ahead.
If you look at Section 7, it outlines what is required by law, and there is a publicly noticed hearing.
Okay, thank you.
I did have some speakers on the list for Board Bill number 218. Again, we'll just keep going through that list. If there's something new that's important to us, bring it to our attention. The next person that wouldn't be a repeat is Matt Negri. Thank you. The next speaker, Matt Brazelton.
My name is Matt Brazelton.
Thank you. Richard McGuire.
I'm Richard McGuire, and unlike most of the previous speakers, I am new to Lafayette Square. I moved to Lafayette Square, the 1000 block of Mississippi, in the fall of 2013. One thing that attracted me to Lafayette Square as a new place to reside was the community. It's an engaged community that has a number of avenues for people to demonstrate a commitment to their community. I love living in Lafayette Square because I can go for a walk around the park or down the business district, and you see neighbors, you engage with neighbors. The other thing I would like to say in my support of this bill is that there is a strong and long history of self-governance and commitment to the community by a variety of community organizations, including the Lafayette Square Restoration Committee, the Lafayette Park Conservatory, the Lafayette Square Business Association. And these people are committed to the neighborhood and making the neighborhood a safe community with engaged citizens. And I support the bill on those terms.
Thank you. All right, have a nice day. Erwin Peters. All right, and then Glenn Eckert. Thank you. Alderwoman INGRASSIA, you're recognized again to close on Board Bill number 217.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In closing, I wanted to follow up with a few points. First of all, I wanted to thank all the residents who came down to speak today. It's one of the things that makes Lafayette Square a very unique neighborhood is that there is so much involvement. With respect to the Section 5 language that was mentioned by Mr. Williams, that language comes directly from the state statute. It's included in numerous other SBD lists, including Alderwomen, the SID that governs South Grand. And legally, the board of the SBD has to have a public meeting in order for the list of projects to be decided upon. So there are checks and balances. And there is an approval process after that that occurs at the Board of Aldermen. So there are two levels there. To the point that residents are not able to decide what the money is spent on, I feel that's inaccurate. In addition, all state and local laws would require public improvements to be subject to the WBE and MBE requirements. So I think that's an important point to make as well. Additionally, Lafayette Park provides recreation, movie nights, concert, a myriad of activities, not just for Square residents, but for the entire region. Most importantly to me are Clinton Peabody residents. Those folks do not have well-kept amenities in their housing complex, and a lot of the families spend a lot of their time in Lafayette Park itself. I'm asking for the committee to allow the residents themselves of Lafayette Square to decide whether or not to impose this tax at the April election. And I ask for your support.
Thank you. Are there, all right. Your name is, excuse me for 1 second, Alderman. Pardon me? We could take a look and see if you see that name. Okay. Oh, you were on. I am so sorry. You were under Otis's name. I did not see that. Ms. Williams, come up, and I feel bad about that. I thought it was Otis's signature.
Hello?
Hi, and I'm sorry about that. I thought that was Otis's signature. You're G. Williams. All right. Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank Mr. French personally because you are the alderperson for my mom and a few of my family members. So sometimes when I hear some of these residents talk about problems, and then I'm fully aware of other problems, kind of leaves me speechless. First, let me say that I'm a writer. I have published articles in several newspapers, but I have never been one to take to any podium to speak publicly. It is a gift that I will never acquire. However, there are times when my passion regarding an issue forces me to put my worst foot forward in an attempt to be heard. And therefore, I stand before you today. I want to point out this, also point out to you that Lafayette Square consists of over 1,100 parcels. Say that so that you will review this in the proper perspective. We'll also say relative to this meeting that there are many more who would be here had they not received notification of this particular meeting Christmas Eve. In the middle of the holidays, probably many out of town and some busy with shopping and house guests, but I wanted to make that point. Lafayette Square is a historic neighborhood, and it is a beautiful neighborhood. It is, in fact, a popular tourist attraction. When you drive through the area, you don't see an area that is suffering from blight. It is a child-happy and dog-friendly area. You will see an area that has been revitalized and continues to be revitalized by individual owners who do so with great personal effort. And much credit should be given to those earlier renovators who achieved the current state of its revitalization with great personal effort and by harnessing the goodwill of residents, certainly by not alienating them and seeking to encumber their neighbors' property without any consideration being given to the neighbors living in the area. Most of the people that have spoken out are business owners, and I will say perhaps far more affluent than the average neighbor living in Lafayette Square. That doesn't take anything from them. I mean, that's something that we all strive for and we want. When some of them talk about a loss or reduction of revenue in recent years, surely we all recognize that everyone was impacted by what was considered a nationwide economic downturn that almost resulted in the total collapse of our entire financial system. This impacted everyone, not just a select few. Many people lost jobs, pensions, and other sources of income. Many more suffered from an onslaught of unexpected medical expenses and even lost their home. To suggest that there is now a need to attach a mandatory assessment to many of these same people in complete disregard of these facts for the sole purpose of fulfilling the ambitious goals of a few is disheartening, to say the least, because many of these people are my neighbors. And having served 29 years, 7 months in the Army, we have lived in different states, different neighborhoods, and I can tell you, the way to strengthen a community is harnessing the goodwill of people, not alienating them. You talk and you hear them talk about capital improvements. Capital improvements are always desirable. But individual homeowners recognize that they must exercise sound judgment when taking on additional debt. They must also clearly understand the difference between maintenance costs and improvement costs. This plan offers no projection for our current maintenance expenses on already existing improvements. Any capital improvements are going to subsequently require additional maintenance costs. And so there must be restrictions placed on improvements so as to restrict and control the overall debt load, because there is a tremendous price to pay. For myself, approval of this now as it stands means that I will pay $1.77 every single day to live in the house that I live in now. And that does not include regular real estate property taxes. That $1.77, which could be having a parking meter in front of my own home, has nothing to do with my additional expenses. Tax expenses. That's me. What about many of the other residents living in that community who are good people, who do not own businesses, who have lived there all of their lives, have not been problematic? What is the impact? Have you heard anyone in here talk about the potential impact on those people? Longtime residents, seniors, and other people who are on fixed income. I personally think that that is a very, very important consideration. I also don't like putting so much power in the hands of a few well-connected and uncollected group of people whose primary objective is self. I don't mean to offend, I'm speaking from my heart. And Mr. Scott said, Otis, I'm surprised that you would come in late. Mr. Scott, it is never too late to speak out for what is just. And I speak out on behalf of a lot of people. Many I know who would have made this meeting had they not expended their holiday leave and had to be at work today. Please forgive me for my disarray here. As I said, I am not a speaker. And one of the most important things that I like about Lafayette Square presently is its diversity. That is one of the things that makes it beautiful, that makes it what it is. And there are some who seek exclusivity. That's fine, but it should be paid for out of their pocket, not on the backs of people who might be forced out of their home if these assessments, which we all know are not permanent, they will continue to rise. The valuation rise, the real estate property rises. The real estate property rises, the homeowner insurance costs rise. And so there is an end result. And I would like to say, lastly, to Mrs. INGRASSIA, I would love to see the city adopt some type of legislation that will mandate people who have these derelict properties that are standing all over the city, Mr. French, and they're doing nothing about it. And many of these same people own and operate businesses in other parts of the city. I would like to see you put forth an effort that would mandate that in order for those people to renew their business license, their car tags, they address those properties and pay those are lost revenue. If the city would reel in, make an effort to reel in those lost revenues, many neighborhoods that are losing value today might not, if those people were required to address those properties. And I could cite a couple of them. One is in my mother's neighborhood that was there when I left for college. It's still there. And I was shocked to learn that the company was owned by a realtor who lives a couple of blocks over from where I live in a very, very nice, well-manicured home. But in any case, thank you for your time. And I do want to point out, if any of you have read the Where We Stand report, that is available to everyone. I only have one page. St. Louis ranks 8th in affordable homes and 10th in homeowner households. However, it ranks first in disparity in housing opportunities between African Americans and white households. And I think there comes a time when we need to start focusing on building communities, not driving spears in the hearts of those that are currently, I would say, doing okay. I recognize that there may be maintenance issues. I have no objections with maintenance issues. But maintenance, we're talking budget, we're talking restriction, we're not talking a kitchen sink with everything on it. And when they talk about public hearings and all of that, I don't want to get a Christmas Eve notification of a public hearing, 2 days beforehand relative to this. Anyway, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Alderwoman Ingrassia, you can finish your closing now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, I thank everyone for coming down and giving their opinion. I've worked personally tirelessly through participatory budgeting over the past 2 years to bring in a group of people who in the past were not participating in neighborhood activities. And so this will allow those people, as well as the folks who are here today testifying on behalf of this bill, to decide for themselves if they want this tax to move forward or not. Additionally, I realize that the notice came on Christmas Eve. There are statutory requirements with respect to when notices get sent out, and so that is what was adhered to in this case as well. And again, I respectfully ask for your support of this bill today.
All right. We have a request for you to answer one more question. Alderman French.
Thank you. So do you worry about the further gentrification of the Lafayette Square neighborhood and in fact pricing people out of that neighborhood even more?
It definitely is a concern to me, but again, I think that it's up to the people who live there to make decisions on whether or not they want this tax to be imposed. Shouldn't be my decision or your decision on whether or not that happens.
Okay, but in deciding to put this on the April ballot instead of March ballot, you're going to get a lower turnout, and so it's going to be a smaller sample of the Lafayette neighborhood who comes out and ultimately decides to raise property taxes.
I think that possibly could be the case. Again, we are working very hard in all sections of the 6th Ward, including Lafayette Square, to increase voter turnout and civic engagement through participatory budgeting and other activities.
Okay. Well, Lafayette Square is kind of like an island in the 6th Ward, though. It's more affluent, less racially diverse than the rest of the ward. So I do, I think we all should be concerned in the city when we increase sales tax or property taxes that, we are starting to price people out of certain neighborhoods. I haven't worked the math, but the one gentleman back there who spoke said his taxes were going up 11%. I mean, that's significant. That's a significant increase. I think that's something we should take into account. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderwoman, do you have two opponents in the April election?
I do.
All right, so I would assume that there will actually be a fairly big turnout.
I would assume so, yes.
Thank you. But I think she has a Green and a Republican. All right, thank you, Alderwoman.
Welcome.
I will entertain a motion on Board Bill number 217.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we pass Board Bill number 217 out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Is there a request for previous roll? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Cruzen, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Moore, Alderman French, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Carter,
Aye.
Alderwoman Green,
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye.
5 aye votes do pass.
Thank you. Board Bill number 218 is the bill that actually puts it on the ballot. I would entertain a motion on Board Bill number 218. It's been moved. I need a second. It's been moved and seconded that Board Bill number 218 come out of committee with a due pass recommendation. There has been a request for previous roll. Seeing no objection, Board Bill number 218 passes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Meeting adjourned.